turning point. Today, the story of how a forgotten drink became one of America's most iconic summer treats. But before it became a piece of summer, it was just a cup left outside overnight. Most products begin with a plan, a meeting, a factory, a recipe, a company trying to solve a market problem. But Popsicle did not begin that way. It began because a kid forgot his drink outside. In 1905, an 11-year-old boy named Frank Epperson mixed powdered soda flavoring with water. He left the cup outside with the stirring stick still in it and went back inside. During the night, the temperature dropped, the liquid froze, and by morning, the drink had changed shape completely. Most people would have looked at it and seen one thing: a ruined drink. Frank did not. He saw something strange, something he could hold, something that was no longer just a drink. And that tiny difference matters, because sometimes a product is not born when someone invents a new ingredient. Sometimes it is born when something familiar changes form. A drink became portable. A liquid became something you could hold in your hand. A mistake became a treat. And years later, that frozen cup with a stick in it would turn into one of the most recognizable summer products in America. Not because it was complicated, but because it was simple enough for a child to understand instantly. Cold, sweet, colorful, on a stick. That was the hidden power of Popsicle. It turned a basic human pleasure into something easier to buy, easier to eat, easier to share, and almost impossible to forget. But the strange part is this: Frank discovered the idea as a child. Then, for years, almost nothing happened. The accident came first. The business came much later, and that is where the real story begins. Frank Epperson was not a food scientist. He was not working in a laboratory. He was not trying to build a frozen dessert empire. He was just a boy in Oakland, California, playing with a drink. At the time, powdered soda flavoring was simple. You mixed it with water, stirred it, and drank it. There was nothing revolutionary about that. Children did it. Families knew it. It was ordinary. But ordinary things become interesting when one small condition changes. Frank left the mixture outside. The stick stayed in the cup. The temperature fell below freezing, and the drink froze around the stick. That detail sounds almost too small, but the stick changed everything. Without the stick, it was just frozen liquid in a cup. A cold accident, a problem, something you would probably throw away. But with the stick, the frozen drink became an object. You could pull it out. You could hold it. You could eat it without a spoon. You could walk with it. You could hand it to a child. The invention was not just the flavor, it was the format. That is the part people often miss. Many products do not win because they taste different, or because they use a secret ingredient. They win because they remove friction. Before Popsicle, a sweet drink was something you had to pour. A frozen dessert was something you usually needed a dish for. A cold treat could melt, spill, drip, or require someone to serve it. But this thing was different. It had its own handle. It was self-contained. It was cheap. It was playful. And it turned eating into a tiny experience. A child did not need to understand the invention. The child only needed to grab the stick. That is when a product starts to become powerful. When the design explains itself. No instruction, no pitch, no complicated promise. Just a frozen drink, waiting to be held. But here's the part that makes the Popsicle story more interesting. Frank did not immediately become a famous inventor. He did not wake up the next morning, build a factory, and flood America with frozen treats. For a long time, The idea remained small. A childhood discovery, a neighborhood novelty, a memory. And that delay is important, because the first moment of discovery is not always the real turning point. Many people find something interesting once. They notice something strange. They stumble into a small idea. They say, "That's funny." And then life moves on. The world is full of half-born ideas, things someone noticed, but never developed, things that worked once, but were never packaged, things that made people smile, but never became a business. Popsicle could have stayed there. A small story from childhood. A frozen drink Frank once pulled from a cup. Nothing more. But years later, as an adult, Frank came back to the idea. And that is where the story shifts. Because a child can discover something by accident, but a founder has to ask a different question. Can this be repeated? Can this be sold? Can this become a product? That is the distance between a lucky moment and a business. The accident gave Frank the idea, but the business required shape, name, distribution, and proof that people would actually pay for it. And Frank eventually found a place where that proof could happen. Not in a boardroom, not in a quiet shop, but in a place full of heat, noise, families, children, and summer hunger. Neptune Beach, an amusement park near Alameda, California, the kind of place where people were already looking for small pleasures. A cold treat did not need a long explanation there. People were hot. Children wanted something sweet. Parents wanted something cheap. And the product had one beautiful advantage. You could understand it from 10 feet away. A colored frozen treat on a stick. That was the whole pitch. At first, Frank called it the Epsicle, partly from his own name, Epperson, Epsicle. It made sense. But the market does not always choose the name the inventor likes. Sometimes the customer names the product better than the founder does. Frank's children reportedly called it Popsicle, their father's frozen treat. Popsicle, Popsicle. And that name did something powerful. It made the product feel personal, friendly, childlike, easy to say, easy to remember. A good name does not just label a product. It changes how the product feels in the mouth before you even eat it. Epsicle sounds like an invention. Popsicle sounds like summer. That matters in a product built for children. Because children do not buy like adults. They do not study features. They do not compare technical advantages. They want the thing that looks fun, sounds fun, and feels like it belongs to them. Popsicle had that. It was bright. It was cold. It was held like a toy. It could be shared, begged for, dropped, chased, remembered. And then came the business layer. Frank patented the idea. The product moved beyond the neighborhood. Rights and production began moving into companies that could scale it. And suddenly, the little frozen drink was no longer just one man's invention. It was becoming a market. That is when the story becomes less cute. Because the moment a simple product proves demand, other people notice. And in the early 20th century, frozen treats were becoming a serious business. Refrigeration was improving, ice cream bars were spreading, companies were experimenting with new shapes, coatings, flavors, wrappers, and ways to sell cold sweetness to the public. The stick was becoming valuable real estate. Whoever controlled the frozen treat on a stick could control a piece of summer. And Popsicle was not alone. Good Humor had its own frozen product on a stick. Chocolate-covered ice cream, clean, portable, sold through a growing system of distribution. And from the outside, Popsicle and Good Humor looked like cousins. Both were cold. Both were sweet. Both were handheld. Both used a stick. But in business, small differences can become legal battlefields. Was it ice? Was it ice cream? Was it sherbet? Was it water-based? Was it milk-based? Who had the right to sell what? The fight was not just about dessert, it was about category ownership. If Popsicle could sell anything frozen on a stick, Good Humor had a problem. If Good Humor could claim the stick format too broadly, Popsicle had a problem, so the market had to be divided. Popsicle would become the world of water-based frozen treats. Good Humor would hold the ice cream side. That sounds simple now, but at the time, it was a battle over the future shape of an industry. Because once customers learn a new habit, companies fight to own that habit. And the habit was clear. People liked frozen treats they could hold. No plate, no spoon, no table, no waiting. Just unwrap, hold, eat, and keep moving. That was the deeper invention. Popsicle was not just selling flavor. It was selling convenience in the form of childhood joy. And during hard economic years, that mattered even more. A cheap treat could survive when bigger luxuries could not. For a child, it still felt like something special. For a parent, it was affordable. For a company, it was repeatable. That combination is dangerous. Low price, high emotion, simple production, clear identity, mass appeal. That is how small products become cultural objects. Not by being the most sophisticated thing in the world, but by fitting perfectly into a repeated human moment. A hot day, a child asking for something sweet, a parent saying yes, a sticky hand, a colored tongue, a memory. That is the real reason Popsicle lasted. Not only because Frank Epperson once forgot a drink outside, but because the accident revealed a product form that people already wanted, before they knew how to ask for it. A drink you could hold, a dessert you could carry, a piece of summer on a stick, and that is Popsicle's turning point. Not the frozen cup itself, not even the patent. The real turning point was when a childhood accident became a repeatable business format. Because accidents happen every day. Most disappear. Some become stories. But a few, when someone gives them shape, name, and distribution, become products that outlive the person who found them. Popsicle began as a forgotten drink, but it survived because it was more than a mistake. It was simple, it was visual, it was portable, and it solved a tiny problem so cleanly that generations of people stopped seeing it as an invention at all. They just saw summer.